Hi, this is the Dan Devlin Show, Honorable People, Honorable Nation. This is our second program. In our first program, hopefully you saw that, and we discussed probably the most important issue, as far as I'm concerned, in American society today, and that had to deal with the United States Constitution, and we asked the question, who is named in the United States Constitution to receive its benefits? Of course, the answer, hopefully you already know. But if not, stop and think and ask yourself that question. Who is specifically named in the United States Constitution to receive its benefits? The answer to that, and I hesitate for a minute because I'd like to give you time to think, but obviously we don't have a lot of time, so I'll get right to it. The Constitution starts out with what I refer to as a statement of purpose. Some people refer to it as the preamble of the Constitution, and the preamble really means the statement of purpose, but I like to use the words statement of purpose because it lets us know more precisely what those words in that very first section of the Constitution mean. If we were to remove the statement of purpose, we'd have no indication whatsoever of precisely who this Constitution and this nation are for. It starts out, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to not one, but two groups of people. The first group is ourselves, and the second is our posterity. And then it goes on to say, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. But what we focused on last time was the concept that most people don't realize that our unborn descendants are specifically named in the Constitution to receive the exact same benefits as ourselves. And that's very important because that group of people oftentimes are targeted for really extermination, for elimination, through the procedure called abortion. Now, in the United States, these issues have gone to the Supreme Court, and normally it's argued on a very narrow position. But the reality is, I love basics. I love the fundamentals. And we are, of course, about fundamentals and fundamental human rights. And again, I'll refer you to our website, FundamentalHumanRights.Org. And if you missed the last video, you can see that on our YouTube channel, which is FundamentalHumanRights.Org. The arguments that have been used generally don't deal with that very essential question that we asked the last time. Who is specifically named in the Constitution to receive its benefits and to receive its protection as well? You know, the fact is that the word posterity means all your descendants until the end of time. And I want you to stop and think for a moment. If we were forming a government and we were standing around, sitting around and discussing what do we want to do with this government, one of the things that we would ask is, well, we have to say somewhere who it's for. We have to let people know that this government is for us. And so, of course, you'd put yourselves in there, which our founders did. But I can imagine that the founders also, when they were sitting around, said, well, we want our descendants, you know, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, to have the benefit of everything that's in the Constitution and everything this nation does. And so that's why they included the words, and our posterity. Remember, it's to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We have the ability to stop the extermination of those who are specifically named in the Constitution. We not only have the opportunity, but we have the obligation and the responsibility. We often talk about rights, but seldom do we talk about the responsibilities that are associated with those rights. And of course, it's our position, because we're so concerned about these things, it's a fundamental fact that you can't have rights without having responsibilities. And so, when we want to take advantage of the things that the Constitution provides for us, whether it's freedom of speech or it's the possession of firearms because of the Second Amendment to the Constitution, or whether it's the ability to elect officials, there are things that we have to do ourselves in order to be worthy of those rights. And that's kind of a foreign idea for most people in the United States. There are so many people who believe that these rights are theirs and they can't lose them. I'll guarantee you that you can lose them if a nation decides to move away from its fundamental principles, which in this country could be found in the United States Constitution. I want to point out that many of the things that are covered in the Constitution, the rights in particular, the formation of how, we have divided government, so there's checks and balances. These things have been around before the United States came into existence. The founding fathers were amazingly intelligent individuals. And so they studied people from many years prior to that particular time in order to determine what was the best form of government and how they were going to do one of the main things, which is protect the people that the nation was made up of. So it wasn't an aristocracy where certain groups of people were higher than others. We were founded on the principle that all men are created equal, for example. If that's the case, and if we're striving to do that, we have to name what people the Constitution addresses in order to ensure that they get the benefits of the Constitution and the nation. And I go into that in some depth because anyone who was going to form a government who wanted it to be for their descendants would have to name them. The Virginia Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Necessity of Taking Up Arms, and other documents address the issue, and they use either the word posterity or succeeding generations, which are essentially one and the same. And they said that we do not want our posterity, for example, to be born slaves. So we know that they knew that their posterity at least included their unborn descendants. Many people have been working for years to try to limit or eliminate abortions in the United States. But we failed to do that fundamental thing, and the court that came down with the initial Roe versus Wade decision failed to ask themselves that question of who specifically is named to receive the benefits of the Constitution and the nation. So, where do we go from here? Once we know this, how can we get our officials and how can we change our nation from one that exterminates young individuals in the womb to protecting them? The fact of the matter is that your legislators, virtually all elected officials, including your sheriff, for example, they take an oath. And normally that oath indicates that they will support and defend the United States Constitution. Now, I've mentioned in the last video that I wrote the book, The Right of Rights, and it deals with this topic extensively. And so you can go to our website, FundamentalHumanRights.Org, and you can find out how to acquire that. And I encourage you to do that because it will give you the tools to deal with your legislators, whether it's at the local level, the state level, or the federal level. You will be able to, one, indicate to them that our unborn descendants are actually named in the Constitution, and because they have taken an oath, they have a responsibility to recognize that they are there, to secure that right for them to continue to exist. I refer to it as the right to be. In my book, I have a section that deals with that whole concept. Every single one of us wants to be able to continue to exist. And those who founded this nation knew that their descendants were the object of all the things that they were doing. Stop and think about it. They were risking their lives, their fortune, their property, and they weren't doing it just for themselves. Being an individual who's actually been in war, I've asked the question, I'm sure that many others ask the question when they're in that situation, why am I here? Well, that answer oftentimes is, I'm here because I care about my country, but more importantly, I care about the people of my country, and more specifically, I care about the people who are closest to me. I care about my parents, my brothers, my sisters, my wife or my husband. I care about my children. I care about their children. I care about securing an honorable nation so that they can live in freedom. And so I stay there, and others stay there, and they fight and they risk their lives, their sight, their sanity, their limbs, because they have this vision of an honorable nation who will protect these interests for them, particularly when they're off fighting to preserve freedom for the nation and the people of that nation. But when you stop and you think about it, currently in the United States, what we do is we tell a man that he has no interest whatsoever in his unborn child. In the last video, we talked about how that occurs. We all know that it takes a man and a woman in order to create that child or have that child come into existence. And I mentioned that I, of course, believe that God is involved in that equation as well. But some people do not. Even if you don't believe that, you do understand that the posterity, the unborn descendant, is the posterity of the man and the woman. So this is a descendant. But it's also the descendant, and I think it's really important to understand, it's the descendant of the grandmother and the grandfather on both sides, of the mother's side and the father's side, and the great-grandparents as well. This is how, families develop, and it's how nature made us. The wonderful part about those who wrote the Constitution, and many others, who have written about honorable people or rights of various kinds, they recognize the importance of doing things today in order to make sure that those who follow them can take advantage of the things that we worked for. One of the things that I said in the last video was I would provide you with information on how you can make sure that we become an honorable nation once again. Remember, we say you can't have an honorable nation if you don't have honorable people. And so the way that you can do that is, one, you encourage people to watch this video and the other videos that we're producing, particularly the one that discusses who is named in the Constitution to receive its benefits. And then contact your officials at all those different levels. Explain to them that they don't really have an option, they have an obligation to protect those of the other group that's named in the Constitution to receive its benefits. And then hold those officials accountable. And Scott, if you haven't put that screen up there, we'll just remind people of what those things are. You are powerful. You have the ability to make sure that we become an honorable nation and we follow through with our responsibilities that come with desiring to have the rights, such as the right to continue to exist. We all know that we exist because we were allowed to continue through the stages in the womb. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today. But yet there are those in American society who do not want to recognize the reality is that that's where we all came from. And I like to ask people, when did you become you? And you stop and you think about that. I believe it occurs at the moment of conception, and we couldn't be us today if we didn't go through all those stages in the womb. So for those who are just interested in equal rights, I don't see how anyone could say that they believe in equal rights if they're willing to have the advantage of living through that period in the womb to be who they are today and yet deny it to someone else. But in spite of that, we luckily have the Constitution who is supposed to provide that protection. In dealing with our politicians, it's important to understand that they take an oath, as I've mentioned before, to support and defend that Constitution. And by doing that, they're obligated to protect those unborn descendants of ours who are referred to as our posterity. But it's important to know, and if your officials don't want to act on this, and they should act immediately, Congress should call a special session and they should say, we need a moratorium. We need to halt abortions because this second group who is named are being denied their rights. And they should do it immediately. If they do not, what do? You remind them that their oath is a contract with us. If they fail to honor that oath, what they are doing is breaking that contract with us. So some people say, well, you can't get rid of legislators, they're there forever. That's poor thinking. The reason that we can't get rid of them is because we won't do what's necessary to remove them from office. The fact of the matter is, when they break a contract with us, we don't even have to have some big movement in order to have them leave office. If they have any honor, they should simply pack their bags and walk out of that office because they have decided that they're not going to do what they said that they would do in that contract with us. So eventually, what we need to do, if they don't cooperate, is to let people know in our community about how their contract with us works and that they violated that contract. And at that point, you cooperate not at all with them. And if you have other officials, such as your sheriff, for example, if need be, you physically remove them from that office because they are in fact trespassing because they have no right to be there. And they have no authority because they have broken that contract with us. The point is, in this video, is that we have the power to ensure, and I'll remind you, and you might have our scroll across the bottom there that deals with the statement of purpose. It says, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to all our descendants until the end of time. And that is what the Constitution is ordained and established to do. And if we don't have the courage to protect that second group named, then we can never be an honorable nation. Because we will not be honorable people. Many people come at this issue, the abortion issue, from a religious standpoint. And I, as what I refer to as a fundamentalist Christian who believes in Scripture, agree with most of the people in the religious community who fight, or at least attempt to fight, on religious grounds. But the fact of the matter is, in the United States, because there are some people who don't share our religion, or have no religion at all, this issue must be settled through the United States Constitution, which is the foundation of the legal system that really guides all the other laws in our life. And in other segments, we'll deal with many of the violations that are occurring in the United States today because we refuse to go according to what that Constitution says. This is really up to you. You need to make the commitment. You need to have people watch this video and our other videos that deal with this topic. Have them go to our YouTube channel, FundamentalHumanRights.Org. Look up our videos. Get together with them and determine what action. Be united. Stand together. Talk to your ministers, your priests. Let them know that you are willing to spend the time, the energy, and the dollars, if need be, in order to do what I consider the most honorable thing of all. And that is to treat others as we wish to be treated. If we want the right to continue to exist, and all the other rights that follow as a result of that, we must meet the responsibility to, one, protect, honor, and defend those who can't speak for themselves in particular. As I mentioned, having been at war, I can hardly imagine what it would be like to know that your child that you know exists back here in the United States, your unborn child, is going to be eliminated from existence while you're off defending us. For us to allow the destruction, the extermination of the descendants of Washington and Jefferson and Madison and Franklin and Lincoln and Patton and all the other heroes and, the unnamed heroes that have risked their lives for us, to allow them to be exterminated is the height of irresponsibility. I trust that you care about this because I believe that you want to be honorable people and you want to have an honorable nation. We all want an honorable nation when it comes to ourselves. But we can't expect people to be honorable with us if we will not be honorable with them. The old saying is it's a two-way street, and it's true. So you have the power to get to your legislators. And I suggest you put it in writing. You can tell them to go to our YouTube channel. You can go to FundamentalHumanRights.Org. And probably by the time that this video is up, we will have that video and others on our YouTube channel. Or correction, on our website as well. But all of this is in your hands. We're trying to do our part, and I'm counting on you. We have the ability to change the moral fabric of the United States. These are tools that you have available to do this. Contact us, let us know that you're willing to work for this effort, and we'll be in touch with you, and together we'll conquer this. This is Dan Devlin. For the Dan Devlin Show, honorable people, honorable nation. God bless you all.